everyone. Welcome to Cellular Healing TV. I'm Ashley Smith. Today we welcome environmental toxins expert and educator Lara Adler. She and Dr. Pompa will be discussing environmental toxins, but more specifically, the obesogenic chemicals that are found in our home and personal care products. We will learn what they are, where they are found, and most importantly, how we can reduce exposures. There are surprising ways that toxins affect us, from weight gain and diabetes to thyroid disease and infertility, and many of these chemicals are hiding in plain sight. Avoiding all toxic exposures can be really overwhelming, and Lara is here to help you navigate this. I'd love to tell you a bit more about our guest. Lara Adler is an environmental toxins expert and educator and a certified holistic health coach who teaches health professionals as well as the public about the links between environmental chemicals and chronic health issues. She takes a practical, real-world approach to dealing with toxins that is informative, accessible, and actionable. She's taught thousands of allied health practitioners, like health coaches, nutritionists, acupuncturists, chiropractors, and women's health experts, as well as health enthusiasts like you in her online courses. Our CHTV audience can go to homedetoxcourse.com to take Lara's Tools for Teaching Toxicity course, which is great for those of you who want to take your health to the next level by systematically reducing exposure to toxins in your environment. Again, that link is homedetoxcourse.com. And practitioners, Dr. Pompa's seminar is coming up. Please join us in Las Vegas on November 2nd to the 4th for our Live It to Lead It event. It's not too late to register. Please go to hcfevents.com and use promo code CHTV to take $200 off the ticket price. All right, let's get into this episode. It's not one to be missed. So let's welcome Dr. Pompa and Lara Adler to the show. This is Cellular Healing TV.
Lara, thank you for being here on Cell TV. Welcome.
You are so welcome. I'm thrilled to be here and to talk with you and maybe kind of nerd out with your audience a little.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And on this subject, it's a good one to nerd out because it's a nerdy subject, but it's one that I've been talking about for years.
Yep.
I believe, and I've said this on every platform that I've spoken from, that the big reason why people can't lose weight today is toxicity.
100%, 100%.
So, obesogens, as we were, laughing before the show, I'm like, they still called that, we used to call them obesogens, meaning chemicals that actually, cause weight gain or at least interfere with weight loss even.
Yes.
So, I have to ask this because, like I said, this has been a message of mine for so long. I mean, how did you get into this? I mean, who's into these specific chemicals and how to get them out of your life? We're going to talk about all that on the show. But how did you get into this?
In sort of a roundabout way, with a little bit of an asterisk in that story. So I have kind of like this funny thing that happened last year that sort of adds a little bit of a interesting twist. So, as I jokingly say, no one grows up as a little girl being like, oh, one day I want to talk about toxins as my dream job. Like, that's not real. But I was always interested in health and nutrition from my sort of early teen days because I became interested in being vegetarian and then vegan, and which I'm neither at this point in my life. But at the time, I was really sort of fascinated by the health aspects of that way of eating. And I kind of dove into all of the books that were around in the sort of early 90s around that topic. And it was just kind of what I nerded out on privately in my life, but I didn't really think about it professionally in any way. And, I had a whole other career. I spent 9 years in the stock photography industry, completely unrelated. But I still always had this sort of burning, nerdy passion about health and wellness and nutrition. And I had a couple of people talk to me about holistic health coaching, and they said, well, you could do that. So I said, okay, let me check that opportunity out, as maybe it's a way that I can flex this muscle professionally. And I found it fascinating. I said, this is it. I went back to school, got certified as a health coach, started seeing clients. And like a lot of beginner health coaches, my clients were coming to me for weight loss. And some of my clients, they did all the things that I recommended. They cut out all the bad foods, the glutens and the sugars and the dairy, and they exercised and they slept well and they lost weight and they kept it off. And it was like this great success.
Yeah.
Then I had this handful of other clients where like they did all those things and nothing happened for them.
Yeah.
Like nothing happened. And they were frustrated. I was frustrated. And I said, let me see what I'm missing, because like I just finished school. They taught us X, Y, and Z, but I'm guessing that I'm missing something. And it was sort of through that investigative process that I landed into this world of chemicals that can trigger weight gain and other metabolic issues. And I was kind of like, whoa, holy crap. Like I've been reading and researching and immersing myself in this world for 15 years now at the time. And this was kind of the first I'd heard about it. And I really struck me as being not okay that these sort of chemicals that were being manufactured and used in consumer products were there in the first place. And then not okay that people didn't know about it, and not okay that practitioners weren't talking about it. And it was sort of outrage, to be honest, that fueled me into this space. But what was interesting, and this is the little twist, is in 2017, last year, I went to where I grew up for my father's 80th birthday. I went back to my old house, was poking around my old bedroom from high school, and I found a box of index cards from a report that I was writing in 1993, I think it was 93, on being vegan. And the first index card that I pulled up was a quote from some book that saying that people were moving to more plant-based diet because of all the toxic chemicals in the environment. And I was like, whoa, that was 26 years ago. So in a way, I guess I kind of was at least a little bit aware of this stuff for a lot longer than I've been in this space professionally.
Yeah, I find that most doctors still aren't talking about it. Definitely don't understand it. I mean, that's why my cellular detox, is like, look, this is what saved my life. And I never thought I would be in the weight loss arena. How did I end up there, right? It's because of what you said. People were coming to me with unexplainable illnesses. And one of the things that I realized is they can't lose weight either, or they suddenly gain weight, or they lose muscle and gain fat. It's like, they become skinny fat, which happened to me. And it was all toxin driven. And then when you look at, which I know you talk about thyroid conditions, most of it's toxin driven.
Yes.
Even
any autoimmune condition, autoimmune condition.
Yeah. Diabetes. I think that I read a study once. It was like 35% of diabetes is toxin related. I think it's 80%, because when you add in the autoimmune component, it's, this is a global.
It's a global issue. And, what I think is kind of mind boggling, especially considering how few medical professionals are actively engaging with their patients around this, is that environmental chemicals have their fingers in every single chronic health issue. So every autoimmune issue, every neurodegenerative issues, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, we've got low IQ, behavior problems, autism, ADHD, you've got even gut issues, skin issues, fatigue, any kind of energy issues, any kind of chronic disease, cancer, like heart disease, diabetes, breast cancer, testicular cancer, all of these things, PCOS, endometriosis, uterine fibroids, all of these have an environmental chemical component. So it totally boggles my mind that this is still considered like this fringe topic, this fringe concept. And it's not. I mean, GQ magazine actually just published an article called Sperm Count Zero, which is talking about the meta-analysis that was just done looking at the levels of sperm is dropped by 50 to 60% over the last 30 or 40 years. It's a problem. And they're pointing the finger at these synthetic chemicals that we're being exposed to that mess with our hormones and mess with testosterone. So again, it sort of boggles my mind that not everyone's talking about this.
Research is like with all these conditions is that toxins are the cause, right?
Yes.
Yet, practitioners, doctors, they're not even talking about it or addressing it. I mean, even in functional medicine, let's face it, they're just, they're running more genetic tests and they're doing all these great things, supplements, but really very few are going upstream to the cause, And look, I become an expert in cellular detoxification because people are doing it wrong. You're an expert in how people and I love this about you, because how people can actually avoid these things.
Yeah.
Because you can do all the detox you want. If you don't get rid of things in your life, forget it. Matter of fact, it's my R#1 of my cellular.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's,
the source.
You have to. So the analogy that I use to explain this to people is this: pretend that you're in a rowboat, right? And you're just kind of rowing along and enjoying the scene. And all of a sudden there's a little hole in the bottom of your boat and it starts filling with water. Now, a little bit of water is okay because our body can handle that. Every boat comes with a little bucket that you can kind of empty out any of that water. And, to quote industry, a little water never hurt anyone, right? So at a certain point in time, that boat starts filling up and you start dealing with symptoms, right? The boat starts filling up, you start panicking, so you start chucking bucketfuls of water over the side of the boat. At a certain point in time, you are going to get fatigued. Your arms are going to get tired and you are going to give up. And then what happens? Your boat fills with water, it sinks, you drown, and that means you get an autoimmune condition, you get diabetes, you get cancer, you have some kind of health crisis. And in that situation in real life, instead of spending our effort and energy bailing out that boat, which is important, the first thing that we do is plug the damn hole. Like, that's what you would do in that situation. And that's really what I'm kind of striving to teach people to do, is let's plug the hole first so that every bucket full that we do throw over actually has an impact.
So let's plug the holes.
Yeah.
Because I think therein lies part of the problem, though, because when we look at people's lives, these things are hidden, right?
Yeah.
So, they don't realize, and they're saying, okay, yeah, it makes sense. So let's talk about, how to plug the hole. Let's talk about where these hidden obesogens are.
Yeah. So, I'm sure that you've talked about obesogens to your audience and other topics because
let's start this new show. So let's talk about, there are specific chemicals that cause weight gain and weight loss resistance more than others.
Yes. And they can do that in a couple of different ways. So they can, one of the ways is just through endocrine disruption. So if chemicals interfere with our hormone system is what regulates our metabolism, our energy, our hunger and satiety. So that's the major thermostat that regulates everything in the body. So a lot of the chemicals that we're exposed to can actually lead to metabolic distress through this process of endocrine disruption. They can mess with our signals of when we're hungry and when we're full. They can mess with the hormones leptin and ghrelin that really screws with our signaling of should I stop eating or not. So on that pathway, it's sort of like an indirect pathway, like it's causing X to happen. And when X happens, we consume more calories or we do some other process, our metabolism slows down. One of the other ways, which I think is really powerful to understand, is through the activation of something called the PPAR gamma receptor. And this receptor is our master regulator of fat cell development. And when it gets activated, it causes one or two things to happen. So if our cells, if this PPAR gamma is activated and a cell is in pre-development, it's a stem cell, that cell will now become a fat cell as opposed to something else.
Right. So it turns the stem cells into fat cells.
It's turning stem cells into fat cells.
The repair of your knee joint or your artery or whatever.
And what's interesting is the research seems to indicate that it's doing it at the expense of what cells that would have become bone cells. Wow. So I'm not really sure how that factors into things like osteoporosis or something with issues with bone density or not, but that seems to be what the literature is suggesting, that it's doing it at the expense of bone cells. So we have this increase in the number of actual fat cells in the body. So PPAR gamma activation to a stem cell means more fat cells. For cells that are already our cells, our fat cells, when PPAR gamma is activated, it actually starts increasing the size and capacity to hold fat in that cell. So now we've got this sort of double whammy. We've got more fat cells, and the fat cells that we have are larger. And those larger fat cells are just receptacles for lipophilic toxins. They're just containers for more toxins. And the body has this defense mechanism that says, hey, if there's not, like, we're going to store all those toxins in our fat because then it saves it from circulating around into our other vulnerable tissues, our other organs circulating through the body. But if you don't have enough body fat to store those circulating toxins, the body's going to go, hey, let's kick it up here. We need to start packing on some fat, some adipose tissue, so that we can expand our storage capacity for these toxins.
Yes.
So that's really what we're looking at here. And, the example that I like to give that we all know about are the people that go on some kind of antidepressant and they have a side effect of weight gain and they start putting on 10, 20, 30 pounds. That's because those pharmaceuticals activate PPAR gamma. So they're doing the same thing that we now know that a lot of these chemicals in our environment are able to do. And unfortunately, we're exposed not just to one or two of these obesogenic chemicals, but dozens and dozens of them, probably in a single day, every day. Yeah. So I think right now there's about 50 chemicals or compounds that have been identified as obesogens. My hunch is that as the research continues in this space, that number is going to get way bigger.
Well, and think about it this way too. There's, if I could add even to some other ways, these come in, they make themselves, they go to the cell membrane because it's fatty. They blunt hormone receptors.
Yep.
And that's one of the links to diabetes, which is obviously going to increase insulin, which is a fat storing hormone. Again, indirect, right?
Yep.
Obviously can block thyroid receptors. Now you can't hear T3, right? And then, of course, that's going to lead to weight gain. And then another way is that it gets, mercury as an example, it gets in the pituitary hypothalamus. That controls your whole hormone system.
Yeah.
And it leads to, in me,
a whole cascade of health effects.
Yeah, I got skinny fat. I was catabolic my muscle. So, and then I was getting fat around the waist. And, so skinny fat is not attractive. But yet a sign of neurotoxicity. And then lastly, certain chemicals turn on genes of obesity.
Yes.
Epigenetics. My gosh, we just went through, 5 ways, maybe 6, 7, I don't know.
A lot of ways.
And
I think what's scary, to be honest, is the epigenetic factor that you just mentioned, because that's predisposing future generations to have a harder time.
Yeah.
They're going to have predisposed to weight gain and they're going to have a harder time losing it. So
I talk about the Duke study. They gave 2 different identical twin mice a toxin, same toxin. They had the exact same food, exact same exercise,
everything.
Identical twins, and the one exposed to the toxin got obese.
Yep, and it changed his fur color.
Exactly, and then the problem was the next generation of mice, they became obese despite their diet and how much they exercise. Sound familiar, folks? This is what we're talking about. This is an epidemic. Toxins are the root. Okay, let's talk about some of the hidden ones, because people are home going right now, oh my God, I want to avoid these things the best.
Yeah.
Where are the hidden?
So people always ask me, like, what are the most important ones to address? Where do we address? I always say we address the ones that are easiest to change first, because otherwise we start swimming around in this panic that is anxiety producing. And we all know that stress is also toxic on the body. So it's a different type of toxin, but it's real. So I like to start with the things that are easiest to change. And the very first thing that I recommend people do is to really emphasize the consumption of organic produce, fruits and vegetables, period, across the board, as much as is feasibly possible within budget. And the reason for this is the pesticide residues that are on conventional fruits and vegetables are obesogens. They're also cancer causing. They're also hormonal disrupting. They're also reproductive toxins. So, let's kind of knock a few of these exposures out of the park at once and look towards consuming organic foods. Now, there's been a couple of studies that are super interesting that have looked at both adults and children to see what happens to the circulating pesticide levels in the body when people stop eating conventional and eat a mostly organic diet. Not even 100%, because it's really hard to do that. Yeah. And what both of these studies found, one was in adults, one was in children, was that switching from conventional to mostly organic led to a 80 to 90% drop in circulating pesticide levels in 3 to 5 days.
Wow.
So it's super fast,
incredible.
super fast. And what that tells us is that our body is wicked smart, like not for every chemical, not for every toxin.
Yeah,
but
heavy metals and things, they burrow in deep.
Yeah, they burrow in. So it doesn't apply to all chemicals, but for certain chemicals like the organophosphate pesticides, if we plug the hole, the boat will, not sink, right? So the bucket will not overflow. And so we can really have a dramatic impact on our circulating pesticide levels immediately, less than a week. So I tell that to people, especially to parents who are like, oh, I got raising kids. It's hard to spend the money on organic. As much as you can prioritize, go to the environmental working group's Dirty Dozen, Clean 15 list to help with budgeting if you have to do that. But for me, it's a non-negotiable. Yeah. It's just what we do as much as is possible.
Yeah, and by the way, just to, expand what you said there, the Dirty Dozen, folks, is basically, these are the 12 things that you must always buy organic. They're loaded, right? Typically it's more porous things. Strawberries are always on.
Spinach. Spinach is always on there. And what's interesting is the environmental working group is pulling those numbers because they do this every year. They're pulling it from USDA data. And what's even more interesting is when the methodology that the USDA is using to test for these residues is trying to mimic consumer behavior. So they actually are washing produce with water before they do the test. So people are like, oh, I'll just wash it and I'll wash the pesticide off. It doesn't work. A lot of the times the pesticides are systemic, which means that they're not on the food, they're inside the tissues of the food.
I remember years ago, it was a Penn State University study where they were spraying the corn, but the problem was the glyphosate and the chemicals were going up right into the plant. That's what you mean by systemic. And then there's the Clean 15, which means that these are typically, they don't spray a lot on these things. Avocados is one of them.
Yep.
That you really don't have to buy an avocado organic. They don't use a lot of spray on that. I don't know, there's some other ones on there, but. Yeah.
So that's, I think it's a great way to budget. To me, like I said, food is my number one expense because it should be.
No idea what my food budget is. Put it this way. Amazon owns Whole Foods now.
Yeah.
I mean, when I walk in there, they should be serving me champagne. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, idea.
Yeah. No kidding. No kidding.
What I spent there last year. I'm not even going to tell you.
No, it's trust me. I live across the street from a health food store. I'm there at least once a day. So I know but
you know what it is though? By the way, when I didn't have money, my food bill was still the most expensive because it's a value, right? So, it's not always, no matter where it was, my food has always been my greater expense because that was my value, whether I was a college income or now, it's still the same. It's just.
And that's the way it is around the rest of the world. Like people's food expenditure in countries around the world is higher than it is in the United States because we artificially suppress our food costs through, government sort of spending in that area. So, it's an artificially low number here in the United States. Anyway, that's the number one thing I tell people to do is push organic as much as possible. The number two thing is, and there's two parts to this. The first has to do with home fragrances. So fragrances in your home. The first part is if you have scented candles, air fresheners, plugins, any kind of Febreze, any of those type of home fragrance products, just throw them out. And don't buy them again. That's a free tip.
With those things, I mean, in an hour, I'm like, I'm brain fogged. They're living their lives this way. I mean, those air fresheners are some of the most toxic things on the planet. I think we looked at one. We were counting neurotoxins in them.
They're terrible.
Every one of them had at least 3 neurotoxins in them. Oh,
they contribute to our indoor air pollution. We don't think of our homes as being polluted in the inside. EPA has found that the air quality inside our homes can be 5 to 100 times worse than what's outside, and it's partly because of all of these synthetic fragrances. And here I think of it as like a nasal detox. So when we eat junky food and Roy Rogers and Fritos and soda and all that stuff, our palate is like completely inundated with these hyper palatable flavors, salt, fat, sugar. And when we start, and healthy food tastes bland until we start eating that way, and then our palate shifts.
Right.
And those foods that we used to find delicious are now so hyper sweet or so hyper salty. The same thing is true when we ditch the fragrances. We swim in it, so we don't realize how bad they are until we take a break from it and then re-expose somebody to those fragrances, and they're going to go, oh my God, how did I ever live like this? So our palate, our nasal palate will adjust.
I have to, I don't know where this fits in. So far, I'm right on top.
All right. Yeah.
Here's my third most irritating. This might be
Yes.
6. Okay. Fabric softener.
Oh yeah, they're bad.
I go drive by people's homes.
Yes.
I get sick. I smell people coming in.
Yeah.
Again, 6 neurotoxins on average in fabric softeners. Oh, not only are you breathing it, but you're absorbing it transdermally into your
through
skin.
your skin. Absolutely.
A hormone. If you give someone a hormone, you put it on their skin, you're giving them these obesogens right into their skin.
Right into their skin. Yeah. So it's a, I think a lot of people sometimes are resistant to start making changes because they think it's going to cost them a lot of money. This is one that's free and it saves you money. So don't buy them. Just don't buy them. And do like a indoor air detox, right? Open all your windows, take this garbage out, and then just don't buy them again. And for people that do, really do like having fragrance in their house, they can use essential oil diffusers. They can bring in flowers. Like they can do it simply.
Healthy, yeah.
They can do that. So that's sort of part 1 of that. And I'm going to circle back around to part 2 of that fragrance section. So step number 3 is to move into the kitchen and to really start looking at the plastics that you have in your kitchen, where they come in contact with food. Now, I'm not a Luddite. I don't want people to think that they have to be, go back to using wood, everything. And, here's to give their...
A Luddite?
A Luddite, like they're...
what are the people called them?
I don't know. The Luddite is just somebody who doesn't want to be around any sort of advancement in technologies.
Mennonite. That's what
yes. Well, so speaking of Mennonites, that's great that you brought that up. So there was an article in a magazine about 5 or 6 years ago titled "Want to Avoid Toxic Chemicals? Drop Out of Modern Society." And the article was about this one population in the United States that had really low levels of BPA and phthalates in their blood, both endocrine disruptors, both obesogens. And it was an old order Mennonites sect that they studied. So, but no, not a Mennonite, a Luddite.
Okay.
And I say that because I don't want people to be plastic phobic. There are plenty of things in our lives that are plastic. I'm sure part of the chair that you're sitting on is plastic. My computer is plastic. There's plastics that are great, that make our lives better, easier, safer, faster, etc. But the plastics where they come in contact with food are a problem because they leach these obesogenic compounds, and they do it 24/7, whether or not, yes, it's worse if you put them in the microwave, but they do it regardless. And there was a couple of studies, one primary study in 2012 that looked at 2011 that looked at, all the different types of plastics, and all types of plastics, even the bioplastics and corn plastics leached some kind of estrogenic compounds. That's a synthetic estrogen. And those estrogens are part of what contribute to that hormonal disruption that can lead to some of these weight problems, or really any other kind of estrogen problem.
Yeah, and BPA free now has become like the new fat free.
Oh yeah.
Or the non-GMO, right?
Yeah.
These are great marketing tools, but I'm like, okay, BPA is just one of the chemicals.
Yeah.
Popularity. It's like they act like that's the only chemical. Yeah, there's.
It's marketing. It's marketing. It's marketing. So people, it was moms actually in the 90s that got really, or early 2000s that got really upset when they found out that BPA was in plastic baby bottles.
Yeah.
So they put up a stink, and they got, that started the sort of BPA bad boy storyline that we have, which is true. It's a bad boy. So companies started taking it out, and they just swapped it with sister chemicals in the same family.
Yeah, right.
And they're worse.
Yeah,
they're worse. So, it's a switcheroo. And what that tells us is that the, chemical industry and these manufacturers are just kind of banking on consumer ignorance. They're banking on the fact that we don't really know what that stuff means anyway. And, now we see BPA free labels I see it on plastics that never once contained BPA in the first place. So Ziploc bags, they never had BPA because BPA is a type of compound that's used to make plastics rigid and hard. So it was never in Ziploc bags, but every Ziploc bag now says BPA free.
They're going to sell more bags.
They're going to sell. So it's like about 15 years ago, Tropicana came out with a orange juice that was quote cholesterol free.
Yeah.
Well, I should hope that there's no cholesterol in my orange juice.
They had fat free on orange juice.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know oranges had fat. It never did.
It never did. But for the person who's like, I don't know, my cardiologist said I'm supposed to be like watching my cholesterol, they're going to buy that orange juice over any other orange juice. So it's just marketing.
Yeah, no, it works.
but it works. So, I think what people need to recognize is, BPA is the sort of poster boy, but it's not the only compound that's in plastics. So phthalates are in plastics. Phthalates are in plastics that are soft and flexible. So our drinking water bottles can leach compounds that mimic estrogen that are in the phthalate family. PET plastic, which is what our sort of pull and spring bottles are made of, is polyethylene terephthalate. That's what PET stands for. And there's been research that indicates that, these plastics all leach compounds. And there's 4 things that increase the rate at which these things leach. And this is why people say don't put the plastics in the microwave. Heat, oil, acidity, and abrasion. And I'll add a 5th one, which is time. So, if we're putting our hot, oily, acidic tomato sauce or tomato soup in a plastic Tupperware container, and then afterwards the container is forever stained orange, it's because the physical barrier between where the plastic stops and the sauce starts gets blurred. And you actually have molecules of your sauce physically embedded into the plastic matrix of the container.
Yeah.
The inverse is we now have plastic molecules in our sauce.
I always think that tomato sauce, it might be the worst offender. It's acid.
Yes. It's acid. Yep. And it's oily. It's the 1, 2, 3 punch.
Oily. Yes.
Yeah. So, that's just an example of where we start. So start with a plastic food storage containers, go for glass instead. It's super inexpensive. I use, mason jars for everything, not just for drinking, but for storage. They're inexpensive. They're hard to break.
And you know what, folks, if you have a glass bowl, you can put your sauce or whatever in that. If you put plastic wrap on top and it never touches the food.
Yeah.
Could the vapor hit it and drop down? Yes.
Yes, but it's still way less.
Minimal. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally minimal. And now actually they have these really great silicone bowl lids that are essentially serve as a replacement for things like saran wrap on top of bowls, and it creates a perfect airtight seal. So those are great and fairly inexpensive. And people don't have to break the bank to start making changes. I think we have to prioritize our health, and that's what this is. So some investment I think is required, but you can do it over time. When I first started, I would just take the pickle jars or the sauerkraut jars or the nut butter jars, and I would run them through the dishwasher and reuse them.
Yeah.
So if, they're glass jars, they're okay to do that.
And with your Tupperware, folks, you could put things like pretzels in them, and then,
yes,
it's not going to go into the pretzel, right? But use it for other things like that.
Yeah. Or use it for crayons or use it in the garage for nuts and bolts. So, you can start phasing, you don't have to throw all this stuff out. You can kind of repurpose it. Right. And start with the storage containers, and then start, here's the challenge that I give people is to open up their cabinets and just kind of look. Just look. Don't do anything, but just take a look at all the plastic. Little kids with their plastic drinking cups and plastic plates and plastic utensils, the plastic pasta strainer, the plastic mixing spoons, mixing bowls, those black plastic spatulas that everyone has.
Silicone spatulas that are better.
Yes. Yeah. And so there's so many things that are better to use than plastic. So I tell people it's a systematic phase out, and that, don't feel that they have to do it overnight or in a weekend. If it takes 6 months to start to do that, great. That's still amazing progress. And it's don't let the time be a discouraging factor for people that are, don't want to dump everything out and kind of rebuild their kitchen from the ground up. So those are sort of the first 3. From there, I would really encourage people at this point, it sort of forks, and there's the next couple are all kind of equivalent in importance. But, cleaning up household cleaners, cleaning up personal care products, and filtering your drinking water. People don't recognize, don't realize how many toxins they're being exposed to through their drinking water. The Environmental Protection Agency, through the Safe Drinking Water Act, only regulates 91 contaminants and regulates them poorly. And there's hundreds of chemicals in our drinking water that are unregulated. So
even hormones now.
Hormones, our pharmaceuticals, our medications, we have narcotics. And in fact, cities will use the amount of, narcotics in the water and the wastewater to extrapolate out how many drug users are there in the community.
Yeah,
so
scary.
It's pretty scary. And then we have, industrial chemicals that a lot of the chemicals that are in our drinking water. Atrazine is the largest, most widely used herbicide. It's in 94% of drinking water tested by the USDA. It's an obesogen. We've got perfluorinated compounds, PFAS compounds, which are found in nonstick cookware. They're found in firefighting foam. If you live anywhere near a military base, they use these foams. It gets into the groundwater. It doesn't get filtered out by your city water. These directly attack the thyroid. They are obesogens. So we're not being exposed to giant quantities of these compounds at any given point. But guess what? If they're hormonally active, if they're capable of being bioactive at low levels, our bodies are designed to respond to these parts per billion, parts per trillion levels of natural hormone in the body. So it makes perfect sense that these parts per million, parts per billion, parts per trillion that we're getting in our drinking water could also have an effect. It's the language, frequency language that our body already operates on.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, toxicology as a field of science really operates under this sort of outdated concept that the dose makes the poison, that in order for a chemical to have a negative effect, you have to be exposed to a high dose. And if you're exposed to a small dose, then the effect is going to be smaller. And while that's true for some things like radiation, it's not true for these hormonally active compounds. And in fact, the opposite is true, is that these very small levels can actually be more impactful than a high dose exposure. Mm. So it is important. And I think water filtration is super important to address for people. It's a little bit lower down on the list only because the investment is usually higher. So right. People sometimes feel a little resistance. And what I really want is people to start taking action right away on the simple things that they can do today, this weekend, this week. And once they have that under their belt and they feel good, then let's tackle some of these bigger issues.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned it, ladies. I hate to bring it up, but she did mention your personal care products.
Yes.
On average, 518 chemicals you use every day. 200 and some of those are known cancer causers.
Yeah.
Obesogens. So, okay, now we've hit the sore spot, right? It's like, because I'm not giving up my eyeliner, this is the one.
Well, you don't have to. And so, if we were having this conversation 10 years ago, I would be like, it's pretty hard to find good stuff. But the landscape around personal care products has changed dramatically in the last few years. In fact, the natural and organic sector of the personal care product industry is the fastest growing in the industry, period. In a sector that has pretty static growth year over year, the natural and organic is one of the fastest growing. And it's because people really are starting to, it's because people are sicker than ever and they're going, what is going on here, right? And so they're starting to look around at their environment, and they started and are continuing to demand safer products. And so you've got all of these small independent companies that have just kind of sprung up from nowhere that are serving to fill this gap in the marketplace. And, even maybe 7 or 8 years ago, there was only a handful of companies that I could find. And they were really expensive and I had to order them online. They weren't in stores. And now there's so many companies out there that are making safe, clean skincare. I can't even keep up. People ask me all the time.
What are your favorite lines?
So let's see, great question. So, Beauty Counter is a really great line. So Beauty Counter is a direct sales company, but you can also just order directly from their website. And they're a very mission-driven, education-focused company that's really seeking to overturn the current legislation that we have around chemicals in personal care products. So the last time we had federal policy update in this area was 1938. Was the last time personal care product legislation was updated. So it's a real problem. Beauty Counter is a great line. Evan Healy is a great line. Juice Beauty is a great line. Vapor Beauty is a great line. I have a collection on my website at lauraadler.com/beauty, which is just some of the products that I use every day. But there's so many great products. People can go to places like the Detox Market, which is a curated online collection. They have stores in LA. That's a super well curated, clean products for makeup and skincare. That's excellent. So there's hundreds and hundreds of lines now that are available. And they don't have to cost an arm and a leg. Sometimes, they're just as affordable as what you'd see in the grocery store. And what's great is that Target sells some of these lines. So Target sells a makeup by a company called Well People. So for people that are shopping at Target because it's just what's around or it's, what they can afford, it's amazing to have these low toxin, non-toxic skincare products that are just on the shelves with all the others, and that people can buy it just because it's there and have the benefit of not being exposed to chemicals through their personal care products. And I think that's like a giant win for everyone.
Yeah, here's a big one everyone can switch today is the darn deodorant you're using.
Oh, yeah.
It's going right into these pores, absorbed in. These things are so toxic.
Yeah. So toxic. And what happens is, and there's a difference between the antiperspirant and the deodorant. And people like the antiperspirant because it stops the little pits, sweaty stains, and you're in a business meeting, whatever, and you don't want to have that, fine. But the antiperspirants contain compounds that are intended to block the sweat glands. They create these little gel plugs that literally block your sweat glands. And it's not good. And sweating is one of our detox pathways.
It's a double whammy on you.
It's a double whammy. And, these ingredients also have fragrances, which means they have these synthetic chemicals like phthalates in them. They have parabens, which is another one of these endocrine disruptors. They have aluminum-based compounds, which are they're neurotoxic. We don't want to be exposing ourselves to aluminum. So, I think there's this, we have to weigh vanity and health.
Always.
We just have to do that. And, for a long time, there was not a lot that we could choose from to make the decision easier, but now there's so many products that we can choose from. So at the very least, switch from an antiperspirant to a deodorant. And then the next step is to move away from deodorants that have these synthetic compounds. There's so many non-toxic deodorants on the market. Primal Pit Paste. My favorite is Pure Pits. I've been using that for 8 or 9 years and I love it. So there's dozens and dozens of options available for people.
Pure Pits.
Pure Pits is great.
Yeah. And another one is, again, I mentioned fabric softener, but what you're washing your clothes in every day. And again, pet peeve of mine, because I know the amount of endocrine disruptors that are in there, neurotoxins, and you're absorbing it in your skin, smelling it it's on you all day long. That's the I have.
I mean, if we think about like what, our bed sheets, right? So most of us sleep in some, depending on the season. And
you're right, all day and night, because bed sheets, in seventh generation, Myers, I mean, you can go down, there's so many now.
There's so many that are better. Absolutely. 100%. There's a great company called My Green Fills that has some really great non-toxic laundry detergents. And they send you, refills every month in a little.
I know the owner of that company.
Yeah, Steven. Yeah.
Yeah, Steven, I'm going to switch. I have it sitting in there.
Oh, good. Awesome. Yeah. This stuff is great. So, I think there's so many options available for people. It's so exciting to see the marketplace shift. And what that tells me is that our consumers are fed up with being sick and they want cleaner, safer options. And the marketplace is responding, and you've got, these big multinational companies that are really working hard to maintain their market share and to keep the consumer uneducated. They work really hard to do that. The chemical policy in the European Union is a lot stricter than it is here. We've got companies, multinational companies, that have to reformulate their product for the European market, but they won't reformulate them for the US market.
Yeah, sad.
I think this is where, as consumers, we start demanding transparency and buying safer products. It's already happening. It's shifting the landscape. It's why Target and Costco and Walmart and CVS and Walgreens all have written policies around or plans or programs to start phasing out some of these chemicals in their store brand products, and that will ultimately shift the entire marketplace. So we're moving in the right direction. It's just kind of happening slowly.
Well, it's just irritating because, people are they're going for more and more medications, and nobody's willing to step back and say, well, why are my hormones disrupted? Why is this going on? Why is my thyroid not working? Look, the show, we discussed the causes of how you got there. And yet, I promise you, people just still can't, connect the dots in realizing it's just, the accumulation, the effect over years is how you got there. Folks, your body has an ability to heal, remove the interference. That's why this show is important. And look, we didn't have time to get to every one of them, but they can go to your website. You also have an online course that you take people through this, right? I mean, how to detox your life and home, right? I mean, getting rid of these things, the source. Tell them how to find that.
Yeah, so I have actually a whole series of courses, some more advanced than others, and they can just go to laraadler.com. So it's LARAADLER.com and check those out. I have a whole masterclass on obesogens that, really explores this topic further. I have a whole course on water filtration and how to find the right water filter for you, because everyone's water is different. And people don't recognize, and they think, oh, I have a Brita. A Brita is good enough. It's not good enough.
Wow.
Not good enough. So people can just check me out there. Or, I also share a ton of stuff on Instagram. You can find me at Environmental Toxins Nerd on Instagram. It's a big topic, and I love, as you can tell, love talking and teaching about this stuff.
Now, you're talking to the right audience here. We have a lot of practitioners, doctors who watch the show, and I know your courses, you've helped a lot of those and get this integrated into their practices.
Yeah, and that's I think it's really is a twofold thing. It's learning about it for ourselves so we can take care of our own homes, but then learning about it to the degree that we can feel comfortable talking to our clients and patients in a way that doesn't overwhelm them, scare the crap out of them, but instead is really educating and empowering them to make better choices. And I think that in this age where not enough, just like we started by saying, not enough practitioners are talking about it, when practitioners do start talking about it, they're starting to get an audience of people that are like, oh, please tell me more. I don't know anything about this. So it's a great avenue for professionals to explore. So
we need it because, obviously one of my passions is educating professionals about the proper detox. I would love to invite you to not my next seminar because we're filled, but the one in April.
Yeah.
So Ashley, my team member here, we're going to get you there because
I love it.
That focus on that seminar in spring is cancer. And, we really need to, address these chemicals as well. We're talking about obesogens here, but believe me, they lead to cancer as well. Well, hormones.
Yeah. Well, they all play double duty. Right? Yeah. These obesogens are carcinogens. They're neurotoxins. That's the problem with these chemicals is it's not just causing one thing to happen. It can cause a whole bunch of things to happen. And that depends how the disease manifests depends on the genetic weak link of the individual.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get you that seminar as a speaker.
Excellent.
Yeah, so hopefully those dates work out. Ashley will get with you on that. But listen, Lara, thank you so much for being on.
You're so welcome. This is so much fun, Dan.
This is my wheelhouse, my passion.
Yes.
And I love this conversation. And gosh, share the show with your friends and family, folks, because this is the key here. You have to get upstream to the cause. And Lara, you're doing it better than anybody. So
thank you.
Well, that's it for this week. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to check out Lara's Toxicity Tools course by going to homedetoxcourse.com, and you can also check out her other amazing courses there as well. And practitioners, you are invited to join us at Dr. Pompa's Live It to Lead It seminar in Las Vegas from November 2nd to the 4th. You can go to hcfevents.com for more information, and you can use the promo code CHTV to take $200 off the ticket price. We'd love to see you there. We'll be back next week and every Friday at 10 a.m. Eastern. We are deeply grateful for your support. Please remember to spread the love by liking, subscribing, giving an iTunes review, and sharing the show with anyone you think may benefit from the information heard here. And as always, thanks for listening.